One of the most important thing that is asked by project managers when they're presenting a report to their seniors or to their customers, uh, what are the risks you see in the project? And most of the project managers will say, oh, okay, there is a probability that some people will take leaves. And many a times people are not really able to uh, think think too much beyond risks which are related to team members or the resources, what we generally call that, although that's not a preferred term for me, but that's what we usually call. But risks are different types and different ways in which risk can appear in a project, and we should be able to identify those as a project manager. Let's understand how we can do that. So very simplistically, if we look at any assumption which we are making or any dependency that you have in the project is actually a source of risks. Okay, so let's see. So you have made a project plan, and somewhere down the line in the project plan you expect a certain functionality to be given by some other team, which may not be related to your project but is part of a bigger scheme of some application development. That team could be your own organization, or it can be a third party organization also. Now you need input of that team to proceed further on your deliverables. So there is a dependency. Now what if that team is not able to provide that particular functionality by the date you require, right? So there is a dependency, and you stand a risk of missing your timeline if the other team does not provide the required things to you. So that dependency is immediately a source of risk, right? Now, something which goes hand in hand, when you make a project plan, you actually assume that the other team, the third party team, will actually provide you the required functionality by this date, and your plan stands good with that. So assumptions and dependencies kind of go hand in hand, but typically all the assumptions you make in the project, for example, the assumption of choosing a technology for a particular technical problem, right? You assume that the chosen technology will be able to arrest all the technical needs of the project, but later down the line you realize that your technology probably is limited and that cannot handle some of the features, right? So the assumptions that you make and the dependencies that you have in the project, right, they are the real sources of your risks. So when you make a project plan, make sure that you identify all your assumptions, all your dependency, put those in the risk register. I'm sure everybody knows how to use a risk register, but just to summarize, you list down the risks, which are your assumptions and dependencies. Then you give a probability of occurrence based on how likely they are to occur or how less likely they are to occur, and what is the impact it will cause, right? So you give in a scale of 0 to 1 on the probability, and you can give any scale for the impact, 1 to 10, 10 to 100, whatever, and then you do a multiplication of probability and impact, and you come with a risk score. The higher the risk score, the higher the impact, or uh, you getting impacted by that risk when it materializes, right? um, and then you can come up with steps to handle the risk. Okay, so how do you handle the risk? You can create a risk response plan. The risk response could be you altogether avoid that risk. For example, if you are dependent on the other team for a functionality, can you develop that yourself without being dependent on the team, right? So you are totally avoiding that path. Or you totally avoid that feature. Can you, I mean, you talk to your customer and say, maybe we don't need this feature at all, right? So you are avoiding the risk. Or you, if you cannot avoid, then you try to mitigate the risk. Now mitigating the risk is trying to minimize the risk impact. So how can you do that? You can put a plan in place. You can start following it with the third party, that okay, by make sure that you give it to me by this date, otherwise I'll be. So you start following it up early, and you have a plan in place. You should also have a plan in place, what if they're not able to give me? Can we do something in parallel without jeopardizing the project timeline? So these are certain ways in which you can mitigate the risk or avoid the risk. to totally nullify the impact of the risk on your project plan, essentially timeline and budget. So we talked about how to identify risk, how to put it in a risk register, how to address the risk, but we did not talk about how to define a risk. So risk is, let's define the risk. Risk is an unforeseen event which can happen in future, and if it occurs, can impact the project positively or negatively. Yes, positively also. Sometimes risks can actually be beneficial to you. Think about it. Okay, bye.